Welcome to the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the ProView Network. Joining me are reporters Spencer Hill and Brooklyn Green.
Dream style.
We got a lot of neat stuff going on this week, and of course had a lot of great races last week. But let's kick it off by first talking about what's coming up on the National Series.
National Series for today, May 4th, we have the Camping World Truck Series race at Dover. And then we have the Toyota Care 250 coming up at Richmond. And then we go into Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series action, which will be Saturday, April 21st for the Toyota Owners 400, also at Richmond. Over to IndyCar now, April 22nd, the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama at Barber Motorsports Park. Formula One will have the week off with their next event being April 29th, and NHRA has their Spring Nationals April 20th through the 22nd.
A lot of cool stuff going on in the National Series, and looking forward to the four-wide for NHRA. But Brooklyn, what do we got going on locally this weekend?
Yeah, so we've got a couple things going on locally. At ABQ Dragway, Saturday, April 21st, we got the Street to Strip, which will be 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. At Sandia Motor Speedway, Saturday, April 21st, we got Clay Oval Racing, which starts at 6:30. And that is the Sandia Speedway Wing Program season opener. And at Moyote Motocross Series, we have that going on May 5th and 6th.
And that's round 2 for that series, so it ought to be pretty cool to see that. But wanted to talk a little bit about, we both went out to Sandia last weekend, and a pretty decent turnout. I know that April sometimes is a little fast for everybody.
Yeah.
I know at least 3 drivers that didn't have their car ready to come out, but 54 cars came out, and of course I know you were real close with a lot of the mini sprint drivers. Talk a little bit about some of the drivers that came out.
So I was super happy to see that Casey Gossett actually took the win for the mini sprint race. After everything that family's been through with their racing stuff being stolen, getting the car together the night before, he actually took that victory in the mini sprint, which was super awesome to see, despite the horrible wind and dust everywhere. I mean, of course, it's a dirt track, you expect dust, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So you've raced with some of those competitors. What do you look for a good mini sprint race?
Good mini sprint race as in track conditions or just overall competition?
Well, on a shorter track like that, I mean, I understand the dust and stuff, but does it play into that much? Is it because it's so much faster that the dust is really more of a problem than, say, it would be on, like, say, the bigger track?
The dust really does become a big issue when you are running a smaller track like that, because everything is just so close quarters. The racing side by side, there's obviously a lot less room with usually the same amount of drivers that you'd have on a big track. And with all that dust just circulating in the same area, it gets a little bit treacherous, and it was this weekend.
Wow, yeah, and I mean, of course, there's a couple of reasons for that. Some of it, of course, is just getting enough water on the track, but you don't want to get it too wet. Likewise, you know, sometimes it's just if a program goes on too long. And it seemed like it was moving along okay. I was just curious, and either one of you could jump in here. Does having it during the day make that harder, make that better? I mean, is it, you know, does it actually dry out the ground more than running at night?
It's a huge problem, especially from a track promoter and a water standpoint in general when you're working on a dirt track. That's why you don't see many dirt tracks run day races anymore unless it's early in the year or very late in the year. You just can't keep the moisture in the clay, unfortunately. I've always been a big fan of the day races, though. It's really interesting to me. The track is almost always dry, so it really puts a lot of driver into it, you know, and takes out the motor aspect, which is always a little bit nice for the underfunded teams.
Right.
And it's a little bit less ideal for the fans, really, because it does end up stirring up a little bit more dust. But there is a right way to do it. There's a nice balance between the right amount of moisture and, unfortunately, getting it a little bit too dry, like it sounds like they were struggling with this weekend at Sandia.
Well, and being the promoter that started the April day races there, the real issue, why we had approached it originally, having the April races in the day, is because just look how cold it was over the weekend.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the grandstands. Now, I will have to say that the grandstands didn't necessarily look all that full, so I'm not sure it's that big a deal. And right away this weekend, they're going to go right into, it's an evening race with racing starting at 6:30. Other divisions that were out there, the Cruisers and the Hornets got it going for the season. Congratulations to Susanna Bonesteel for getting her victory. Heat race win as well as a overall win. Street stocks, one thing I noticed is they really seem to be on the build. They started the season with 10 cars. Now that's one of those divisions that they will beat and bang each other all season.
It's definitely close quarter racing, a lot of rubbing and racing over there, especially here at Sandia, where it seems like there are a lot more cars coming over the track, and that means more rookies. A lot of the veterans trying to teach them what's going on, trying to show them around the course a little bit, and you do get that side-by-side action.
Yeah, and then of course we also had the X mods and A mods. Looked like they had enough car count that they would be able to run independently. But not first show for non-wing sprints. Looks like Jason Grady, Caleb Seiss did pretty good. He's been a guest on this show before, and Colt Trium. So I mean, what is that? That's a 16-car field? I mean, is that pretty good for local non-wing sprints?
Well, they were also going up against a competitor show down in Las Cruces with the 305 wings, and that kind of splits up the field, which is something that I've really just never understood. I don't understand why tracks don't get together and make it work for everybody. It's really frustrating from a driver having to choose, do you go up north, do you go down south? And it makes it really hard when you're trying to build a schedule, and it hurts the fans too a little bit because they don't know where to go.
Absolutely.
It looked like a big turnout at Las Cruces as well. I saw a couple videos, and it looked about even. I'm not sure the exact car count there, but it looked pretty
And
even.
Wes Wofford getting back into victory lane, going back-to-back down there too. Really good showing down there. Great racing.
Well, and that was race 6 and 7 for the season in Las Cruces.
I believe it was. I think it was 6 and 7 down there. Still early in their season.
Yeah.
They're coming up really quick with their US MTS show. That's probably their biggest race of the season. That's coming up, I believe, this weekend down there.
So when can we start seeing the other tracks around the state putting their schedules out? Are most of them out on social media
I
now?
believe the majority of them are. You guys have your schedule set with places all over New Mexico, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're only racing really just 2 races in New Mexico this year.
Oh, wow.
Las Cruces, that was going to be my last time down there. Of course, they're shutting that track down. We're going to move over to the Vado Speedway.
Yeah.
And my last race in New Mexico is planned for July 6th and 7th up in Aztec.
Also notice that there was some activity over at the quarter midget track. When does that season typically get started?
Usually around the same time. I know it's changed a little bit since I've been at the quarter midget track, but I know they have their biggest race in October. That's the Balloon Classic, where people come over for all around the United States. That's probably the quarter midget's biggest track there at Sandia. But they should be starting here pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think that's a national qualifier race, if I remember correctly, the balloon. But tell us a little bit about what you were doing last weekend.
Yeah, I actually got to go on the other side of the pits and hold a couple wrenches. Jason trusts me that much. Went down with the Lucas Oil Modified Series. They were in Tucson at Tucson Raceway, and a great turnout down there, full field of cars for the Lucas Oil Modified Series. Jason unfortunately ran into some problems. We ended up blowing up lap 14, but it was a really good weekend considering leading up to that. Friday, practice went really well. He led 2 of the 3 practice sessions and qualified awesome as well. I think he qualified 3rd. So really good weekend leading up to it. Unfortunately, he ran into some issues. I know he was really excited last week when he came on and talked about it. But they do have another chance here coming up with a track that he really likes at Las Vegas. Awesome.
Well, we'll definitely keep us posted on that. But if you're looking to go out and see some Park and Shine, of course, we've got the annual Spring Thaw is going to be going on at the Worldwide Automotive, and it's the Old Car Garage. For those, most of you know that. It's just off of Girard Boulevard. You can go and check that out. And then, of course, the British Car Roundup Show at the Unser Racing Museum is going to be on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you're into like antique Jaguars and into things like that, you can go check out that show. That's a really good one. April 22nd You got the 12th annual Spring Cruise and Schmooze at the Sonic at San Mateo. That's actually a pretty good time. I'm not sure that I totally get the schmooze part, other than maybe it sounds good. And then, of course, you want to make sure you mark your calendars for Cinco de Mayo, for the Cinco de Mayo show at the Barley Room, benefiting the Blue Star Moms. Going to be a lot of vendors, a lot of neat things going on. And, of course, we're going to have a live band with Split Decision there is going to be rocking out. So it's going to be a really good show. It's free, absolutely free to the public. It's $20 to show the car. Proceeds go to Blue Star Moms. If you are interested in coming out and having a booth there, it's a $50 donation to the Blue Star Moms. So it's a complete write-off. It didn't cost you anything. Give to a good organization. You can come out, hang out. Barley Room's right there. The show is over promptly at 2. We always like to do half-day shows because then it doesn't tear up your whole day. Plus, it's Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
So Cinco de Mayo is going to be a lot of stuff going on.
Got to get partying, right, Dave?
Yeah, got to get your party hat on. But usually I'm pretty tired by 2 o'clock, so I'll hang out for a little. You see what you're saying? But
That's when I'm waking up.
2 o'clock on the car show.
I know,
exactly.
right?
But hey, maybe we can see if there's any way we can do the radio show out there live or something.
That'd be cool.
That would be fun to come out. But make sure you get there at 9 o'clock in the morning, because that's when we do the national anthem. If those of you who've been in any of our car shows, that's how we always get them started, get ourselves focused on living in this great country. We've got a whole lot more coming up, including a great interview with Brian Grandin, and Spencer's going to do that. Great job. A lot of neat information. If you're looking to get out and do a little performance driving, you definitely want to stay tuned for that. You've been listening to the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the ProView Network.
Did you know Sunrun Solar is the largest residential solar company in the country? Go solar and save 20% on your electric bill for as little as $0 down. Exclusive partner with Costco, and member guests receive special benefits. Call Mike Gutierrez at 505-227-0791. Sunrun Solar.
Dreamstyle Remodeling has been wowing homeowners in New Mexico since 1989. Selected as Best Custom Home Remodeler for 3 consecutive years by readers of the Albuquerque Journal, we're also your exclusive provider for top home improvement brands like Renewal by Anderson, Four Seasons, Blaze King, and many others. Founded and headquartered in Albuquerque, Dreamstyle Remodeling is family-owned and now employs more than 500 people across the southwestern U.S. In fact, we've helped more than 60,000 homeowners improve their home in New Mexico, Arizona, California, Idaho, and West Texas. We're committed to providing a superior customer experience. We've earned 4.6 stars with hundreds of online reviews and have an A+ with the BBB. Dreamstyle Remodeling is a proud supporter of UNM Athletics. Visit our beautiful 10,000 square foot showroom at 1460 Renaissance Boulevard across from Sam's Club, or dreamstyleremodeling.com to make your home remodeling dreams come true.
When I train for American Ninja Warrior, I schedule regular workouts to stay in shape. To keep my car in Ninja Tough shape, I head to a Napa Auto Care Center for regular maintenance and genuine Napa Auto parts, like brakes and batteries. I trust my Napa Auto Care Center for quality parts and quality service. And with the 24-month, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty, I drive away with peace of mind every time. Visit AutoCareNM.com to find a location near you.
The Barley Room, a proud sponsor of ProView Networks for over 9 years, is pleased to introduce Black Iron Catering. From weddings and family reunions to birthdays and office parties, Black Iron Catering is perfect for any event. Contact Jamie at 505-459-8259 and book your event today. Black Iron Catering. Let us bring our kitchen to you.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened? Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
Duke City Sports Bar, proud supporter of ProView Sports and New Mexico Youth Athletics. Catch all the sports action from high school, college, pros, and MMA on one of our 35 HD TVs. Start your night off right with any selection from our delicious menu prepared with fresh, never frozen ingredients. Duke City Sports Bar, Albuquerque's newest sports bar. Located on Eubank and Montgomery, dial 505-433-4020.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
And I'm happy to bring in my guest for this week, Legends Car Road Course Pro Champion, Brian Grannon. Brian, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, you had quite the year, really, and you've really had a really good time with a couple of different race cars. How about you tell us just a little bit about what cars you've been able to drive, and tell us a little bit about what makes each of them unique.
All right, well, first thing that I started out with was legend car racing. From there, that's where I kind of learned like the car control and carrying momentum, things of that matter. And we started locally here in New Mexico and kind of got into it for the most part, and decided I wanted a little more competition and wanted to start traveling a little bit more and kind of see some different comp around the United States. And so I started traveling to Las Vegas, Nevada, and racing at the Bull Ring. And then from there, kind of just linked into the bigger cars. Recently just ran a super late model as well as modified.
And outside of your personal racing, you actually have an opportunity to do a little bit of driving on the weekdays too, with a couple driving schools. Does that help you during the week when you're going into a race weekend, already being in the hot seat during the entire work week?
Absolutely, it definitely does. You know, the biggest thing I think it helps me focus on is technique, really. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are going on when you're inside the race car, especially on road course. There's a lot of braking zones, a lot of shifting that's going on, a lot of high speeds. You're constantly on the wheel, so I mean, it's very important to stay focused inside the car and constantly practicing the same techniques, hitting your apexes. There's just a lot that goes into that matter, and working for a performance driving school and doing those things with repetition, you know, throughout the week, it definitely gives me a step up on the competition.
Yeah, and I think we actually have a couple pictures that we can bring up here of some of the cars that you've driven and taught in. Let's bring those up real quick. Here we have a Corvette. You want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, this is a Corvette from the Ron Fellows Performance Driving School. This is actually a Grand Sport. What we do out there is a couple different programs. This is an example of a lead follow. So basically you would have an instructor in a lead car, and you would have 3 or 4 different students in their own Corvettes following behind, and we're in radio communication with them, and we're telling them how to hit their marks, when to use a little more brake pressure as they approach the corners, you know, what their gear shift points basically throughout the racetrack, just things of that matter.
And is that something that they pick up pretty quick when you're talking on the radio, trying to teach them exactly where they need to be on the track?
It's definitely a learning process. We see a lot of people make quite a bit of mistakes, but over a 2-day performance driving school, you know, they have plenty of time to really figure out the program, figure out the race line, the proper techniques that we're teaching. We do go from a classroom type situation and we immediately jump into the race car, and we go out and we practice those techniques that we just talked about, and then we go back to the classroom. We spend most of the time in the car, but we do go back for a little bit of that theory. That way it really sinks in for the student.
And one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about that we were actually talking about earlier today was actually the positioning of the seat inside the cars. That's a really big deal, especially when you're trying to teach people something that they may not be familiar with particularly.
Absolutely, and you know, there's a lot of people out there that would disagree with me, but seating position is by far the most important thing for driving a race car, for wanting to go fast. It's good to feel snug inside the car. You want to be comfortable, and you don't want to be thinking about anything else other than focusing your eyes forward on the road and practicing those techniques. So if you're uncomfortable in the seat, then you're really not helping yourself out very much.
Yeah, I know even with my dirt driving, seat positioning is a huge deal. You need to be comfortable in the car. That's whether you're running quarter midgets, asphalt, dirt, even up to NASCAR. It's so important to be comfortable in what you're driving. That way you can take it to its full potential. Going back to some of the coaching stuff, though, what's the craziest story that you have from that about anything that's happened that was maybe, you know, out of the ordinary or funny that you remember from, you know, the past couple of years?
Well, with the coaching, man, we've seen it all. Honestly, we've heard it all. We've seen it all. There's a lot that goes on at a performance driving school. You have to keep in mind that there's really a wide variety of people that come to these performance driving schools. It's not just people that race or people that are car enthusiasts. You know, these are people that are just coming out to come to a performance driving school. They want to learn their car for the first time. So we see a lot of big mistakes that you and me would obviously laugh quite hardly at. But as far as them, you know, it's a learning process. So I mean, there's a lot. I can't really pick out any one crazy thing that's happened out there, but.
And aside from just the average Joe that goes to the performance driving school, you also get the opportunity to work with some names that we might recognize from TV, like from NASCAR. You've been able to work with a couple of those drivers too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We have people that come in for, let's say, through the Truck Series, the Camping World Truck Series, as well as the Xfinity. We haven't had very many Cup drivers come out. I think Kurt Busch was there just last year. He had brought his whole entire team out, his crew chief and everything out to let them experience a full day of driving, and that was pretty neat. But as far as all the Camping World Truck Series guys go and the Xfinity guys, just as before they're about to head out to their road course races, such as you know, Road America or anything like that.
Just trying to refresh.
Exactly. They come out for a little test and tune. They go through one of our schools. They get paired with 2 or 3 of our best instructors, and we go out there and we spend a whole entire day with them, just focusing on techniques and consistency.
What's your favorite car that you get to drive out there?
Man, there's so many. There's a car that I work with actually, and it's a high downforce car. It's called a Radical, an SR3 Radical, and they're a 1500cc high downforce car. It's an open cockpit, and they're putting up to about 800 pounds of downforce down around 70 miles per hour.
Wow.
And then
That's
we
impressive.
also have the Wolf race cars, which I haven't had the pleasure of driving yet, and that's I think it's a 2.4 liter Honda in those, but they're putting down probably about 1,600 pounds of downforce around 70 miles per hour. And I actually made that
incredible.
mistake. The Radical is actually only 800 pounds of downforce at 160 miles an hour.
Wow. So really some unique vehicles, ranging from something that you would see just on the street to really a full-blown race car that you would see almost like a Le Mans type touring car.
That's for sure.
And then going back into your personal racing, I want to touch on that for sure. Okay. In 2007, you had a really good run at the Pro Road Course Championship with Lucas Oil Modified driver Jason Irwin, who we had on last weekend. You want to tell us a little bit about that program that you have with Jason? I know he wrenches on your car quite a bit, and you guys have a lot of stories on the road.
Yep, we do. Ever since I've teamed up with Irwin Racing, there's been nothing but success. I mean, the kid just knows exactly what he's doing. See, I used to set up my own car, and therefore I never really went very fast. And that was just because of just not following through on so many things. I mean, it's just, there's so much to the car, and there's just so much to be disciplined on. And he's very OCD when it comes to perfection, making sure everything's right. And, you know, and he's always told me that all races are won in the garage. I mean, for the most part, you know, you got to have a car that's ready to go for the racetrack, and he always makes sure that that car is perfectly prepped for me, whether we're oval racing or we're racing on road course.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your Pro Road Course Championship run too, and how that went?
Yeah, in 2017, yeah, we had a really good run. We started out, it's an 8-race series. That's why I've kind of mentioned this as one of my bigger accomplishments, just because it's not something that's very easy to attain, just because it's over 8 different races. Road course is extremely hard on the equipment, on the motors especially. We're at top RPM, full time. There's a lot of heat out there, so just a lot of wear and tear on the cars. But yeah, we started out not so well. but we ended up staying consistent, staying good throughout the season. And by the end, we ended up pulling out the championship right at the very end. So that was
very cool.
That was my first pro road course championship, and I was very pleased with that, being an instructor and instructing on road course. But yeah, it was definitely a big accomplishment for sure.
And something unique on those Legend cars too, they're not air cooled as far as a radiator goes. And you want to tell us a little bit about how you come into the pits after a really hard race like that, say a heat race for example, and get the car turned around and cooled down enough to go back out there and do a whole nother stint of racing?
Yeah, so with these cars, they're air-cooled engines, they're not water-cooled. So as soon as we get back to the pits, we have these big, ginormous fans that we like to, we modified up some fan stands and we put them directly over the motor and just basically air-cooled the engine while we're sitting there in the pits, and that's basically how we prep before we get out for that next session of racing.
Very cool. And then this year, it was looking really promising too on the road course. Unfortunately, you ran into a couple issues though. Really a heartbreaking moment for that. You want to tell us a little bit about what it's like when you have the speed to go out there and win races, win championships, but it just seems like it's one of those years where it just seems like nothing's coming together and you just have those mechanical failures. Just go through the heartbreak that brings.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this year we started out on road course really strong. Actually, our first weekend of racing, I think we went 4 for 4 for wins. We took both heat wins, both main event wins. We started out really strong this year. We had a car that was just amazing. We were on point the whole time. Jason Irwin had it on rails for me, as always. We were out there P1 on the board most of the time. We qualified on the pole most of the time. You know, we actually had the car to beat the entire time, and we got to the last weekend. We were 10 points ahead for the championship going into the final weekend. And yeah, we were just plagued with bad luck throughout the season. We basically, I remember I was leading one race and it instantly caught me off guard because we had an electronic issue inside the car. It started cutting out while I was leading, and I actually had to pull off the racetrack. So that's never good when you're leading a race and have to end early. So we had that failure, and then we also had a chassis break on us in the final weekend, which then allowed second and third place to catch up and put me a good 12 points behind because I ended up getting a DNF for that weekend.
Unfortunately, racers, we all go through it, one of those years. But don't go away because we have a lot more with Brian coming up after the break. You're watching the New Mexico Motorsports Report on the ProView Network.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a #1. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network. Don't sacrifice quality and flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, #life change will occur.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at ProView Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Welcome back to the New Mexico Motorsports Report. I'm Spencer Hill, joined by Brian Grandin. Brian, your home track is the Bull Ring at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, but you're no stranger to racing here in New Mexico. You want to tell us a little bit about maybe some of your favorite memories growing up and racing here in the Southwest?
Yeah, growing up, I didn't do a lot of car racing. I was always into dirt bikes for the most part. I remember my dad had bought me a shifter cart when I was younger, and I had the option of either building that shifter cart or getting a dirt bike. And of course, since I already had the shifter cart, I went with the dirt bike. So I ended up buying the dirt bike, and that was my extent of getting into the car racing back then. I stayed with the dirt bikes for several years. I don't think I started the car and the legend racing until I was about 24, 25 years old, I believe.
So late start, really, considerably.
Very late start, yeah. It was just something I was always really interested in. I had seen them several times locally, and my cousin who had he raced sprint modifieds, IMCA, on the dirt for several years, and I did crewing in the pits with him. He introduced me to the legends, and then one day I ended up getting in touch with the Irwins, of course. That was the legend dealer at the time, and picked up my car, and that's where the legend racing started.
So with such a late start like that, what's some of the hardships that you go through as far as a learning curve? Because kids getting into this now at, 8, 9, 10 years old, that's kind of late nowadays. So getting in at 24, like you said, that's really impressive that you were able to just pick it up and run with it as you did.
Well, I think the younger you are, I think you kind of go through a lot more different learning experiences when you're older. Once you're a little bit older, you're kind of expected just to, pick it up right away. Whereas when you start at a younger age, you kind of get to, go through the years of building up your pace as well as learning the cars, and it's just something that really carries on throughout your childhood. But obviously with me going with dirt bikes and then getting right into the car racing, it was a little different transition. But I really think that I had a little bit of an advantage knowing as much as I did up to that point, and then getting into the car, I think it really helped me out a lot.
Plus you're a lot more mature at that age too, which has got to help, because a lot of times, I see it even with my racing, there's some younger kids that really are getting progressed through the ranks so quick that I feel like some of them aren't really learning the full aspect that they need to be learning too.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's tough out there. There's a lot of young kids, and there's a lot of really talented young kids out there that are racing that pick this stuff up quick, and they're beating off your bumper constantly. They're right there ready to get by you and take the win from you. So it's tough being older as well, and having younger kids coming up and trying to take those positions from you. It's definitely a pride thing, but I don't really mind it. You kind of have to deal with those things. That's how racing
Just one of those deals,
It's one of those deals.
And really, let's go back to racing in New Mexico really quick. Unfortunately, it's somewhat dwindling as far as the asphalt side goes. I would say dirt's still, fairly strong, but asphalt's kind of started to dwindle away here, at least in the Albuquerque area. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's from even back in the day. There hasn't really been a lot of funding, I would say, in New Mexico for the racing. I know the Unters at one point had tried to start things up back in the day, and things never went their way, or they were never able to get an actual racetrack out here started up. And I figured that was going to be our best shot for the most part. I know that even Jim Guthrie at one point really put a lot of time and energy into the racetrack and the facility out there at Sandia, which was Napa at the time. There was a lot of effort brought forward, but I think the funding side of things is just gone. But yeah, dwindled the way you say. It's almost completely gone. And it's
unfortunate too, because it was really a great opportunity for kids to be able to choose their path, and now really you got dirt or you got dirt. So to get into that asphalt realm of things is even more difficult for kids.
It is. It's frustrating. It's nice. When I first started, there were a good 20 to 24 cars every once in a while would show up, and it was just great. We were running on the half mile, we ran on the quarter mile. Really good racing, I felt, and if that racing wouldn't have been present during that time, I felt that maybe I would never have gotten into racing in the first place. So them having that facility there for people such as myself that are, you know, kind of chasing my dreams a little bit and going out trying to, you know, get into the higher tiers of racing or just find a good racing job, whatever the case is. You know, it's nice to have those avenues for sure.
Yeah, maybe here in the near future it'll come back. You never know. But it is unfortunate to see that kind of dwindling away, as we said. Going back into the Legend car racing, though, what's the most laps you get to run in a Legend main event?
Honestly, the most we usually run, let's say for like a Vegas race, it'd be around 30 if we're on a shorter track. I think the most I've ever run is a 40-lap segment.
That is really interesting to me because what I'm going to bring up now is you recently made a start in a super late model, and that was a 150-lap race in an enclosed race car like that with a lot of heat going on. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like transitioning from a Legend car where it's pretty open, a lot of air coming in, going into something like this for so many laps?
Yeah, for this race, this was the Open Comp 150, and like I said, I'd never gone past 40 laps before. With the Legend car, there's obviously a lot of airflow. You're able to stay nice and cool inside the car. With the Super Late, it's got that big windshield. I was trapped in a seat that was highly uncomfortable. It was definitely not made for my fit, but we made it work. And you know, there's no airflow with that windshield. It gets so hot inside. And being that it's a 150-lap race, that heat really starts to build up inside the car. So that was definitely a very big challenge on top of never driving a Super Late before in the first place. And I think it was a weekend event from Thursday through Saturday. Between Thursday through Saturday, I should say, was I think I put down over 350 laps in that one weekend.
Wow, how many tires did you go through?
We went through probably about 4 different sets of tires throughout that time.
And I'm sure there were teams that went through more than that too, huh?
Oh, there was. The bigger teams, of course, they were probably going through a few more sets, but I was just out there on practice sets really trying to get my footwork dialed in and, you know, all the controls inside the car, get myself comfortable, just hitting my laps consistently.
You've also recently made your first career Lucas Oil Modified start in Las Vegas last year. Talk about that weekend a little bit with a ton of passing involved.
Yeah, that was a crazy weekend, and thankfully I had run the Super Late model prior to going into that modified. The Super Late model taught me a lot, and I was by no means a front runner. I was, you know, kind of dwindling in the back a ways, just kind of trying to keep the pace up, keep my nose clean. It was a 150-lap race, which we did finish, by the way, all 150, well, as according to Jason, I finished 149 laps because I was 1 lap down. So I was reminded of that very quickly. But yeah, so we got all the laps, no damage. We took a 10th place finish, which was good for an Open Comp 150. It was my first time out. With the modified, once we started, I think we qualified 18th out of a field of 30. At the beginning of the race, I was up to, I think, around 13th place. I had an air cleaner starting to fall off. And as soon as that air cleaner started to fall off, I had come into the pits. As they were fixing it, I made the mistake of shutting the car off. Well, as soon as the car shut off, it didn't refire. So they went back green as they were pushing me out of the pits, and I was able to tag the back, but I lost my position in 12th or 13th and had to tag back in 30th. So that was for the first segment of the race. We drove from 30th up to 21st right before the end of the first segment. You know, we had the break. I was pretty heartbroken. I was really, really disappointed because we were actually making really good gains throughout the race. And it really just lit a fire underneath my seat, and we started wheeling, and we ended up getting up to 8th place. I had an 8th place finish for my first time ever in Lucas Oil Modified.
Incredible run out there. One thing I really like to talk to other drivers about is the uniqueness of these modifieds. It's so hard for me to visibly tell people like how it is to handle a car that has so much horsepower with so little tire. How would you explain to viewers what that's like on the racetrack?
It's a lot of fun. It makes for a car that's a little more darty. You can move the car around a lot more. As far as the Super Late model, as opposed to the modified, I think the Super Late is weighing in around 2,800 pounds. As far as the modified, it's around 2,500, so not too big of a difference in weight there, but the big difference is that right rear tire on the modified. You know, that tire's a lot smaller.
You got to take care of it too throughout those long races. That's one of the biggest things is trying to conserve enough for the end, and that's another thing going from Legends up into a bigger class. Was conserving a little bit for the end kind of hard to police yourself with?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, because with the Legend racing, obviously we have a treaded tire. And that's another aspect of it too, is getting into the modified racing, as well as, you know, even with the high downforce cars or the super late, you're also going to a slick. Well, at the super late, you have a really big slick, as opposed to the modified, it's a really small slick on that right rear. So it makes it more fun. With the modified, it's a lot more horsepower, the car moves around a lot more, whereas the super late's it's a little more boring, I would say. I mean, it's still a great time to run the car, but you're not really fighting it as much.
That's funny though, because I've gotten that from other drivers too, like that exact same comment. It's just a little bit more laid back almost.
Exactly, a little more chill inside the car.
Do you use any kind of like simulation leading into a race weekend? I know iRacing has blown up tremendously in the last couple of years. Do you use anything like that to prepare yourself?
I'm very into the race simulation. I'm a firm believer in hand-eye coordination. It's a huge deal. You have all these professionally laser scanned tracks from all around the world, and you're putting yourself on those racetracks. You're practicing braking zones, hitting apexes. I mean, it's just a good visual reference if you're trying to learn any racetrack around the world, whatever track you're going to. So it's definitely a benefit in my world.
And you have a pretty neat setup that you're trying to do too with that simulation, right?
I do. Yeah, I have a few different setups. I'm working on a full motion rig just for kind of a little bit of fun, as well as I have a static rig that I use at home as well.
Those full motion rigs are so cool. I want to get my hands on one. I might have to come over when you have that totally completed. Gonna charge a little bit.
A little bit of money, yeah.
But those really would help. I know even with the little bit that I do on iRacing, that's just on a static rig. In fact, I got to borrow it from Jason. But it helps me quite a bit leading into a race weekend, because they just added dirt onto iRacing. And I mean, yeah, you don't get the same seat of the pants feel, but like you were saying, the hand-eye coordination's there, and you're able to adjust with setup stuff. Do you think that as far as setting a car up on a computer, would you take a lot of that information into a race weekend and be able to make similar changes and almost kind of guess yourself into the correct setup for the weekend?
I mean, it's going to be somewhat close. It's not going to be right on point. The biggest thing really is learning the track, learning the braking points, you know, just getting those visual references around the racetrack. That's the biggest thing there. As far as setup goes, I think it's going to vary a lot as far as, you know, track temperatures and everything, ambient temperatures, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's a really good learning tool, definitely.
Yeah, and I know there's a ton of people that have helped you get to this point in your career. Would you like to thank anybody in particular so far?
I mean, obviously the biggest person was my dad that got me into everything. My mom was a huge factor in all this, with, you know, giving me a kidney transplant along the way to help my dream keep going. And also with Irwin Racing, they've just been my number1 support system through everything.
And then how can people follow you and keep up to date with what you have going on? Do you have social media?
Yeah, my email is bgracing8@gmail.com, and I'm just at BrianGrandon8 on Facebook. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You're watching the New Mexico Motorsports Report. We'll be right back.
For 55 years, people have bought trucks from Tillery in Los Lunas. We have a great selection of vehicles, the quality service department, and some of the best deals in the state. But most importantly, we found people prefer to buy trucks from people who actually drive trucks.
Tillery is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network. Locally owned and operated, located in Los Lunas, right off I-25, exit 203. Hey, New Mexico, come check out the newly remodeled guest rooms at the new Wyndham Albuquerque Hotel and Conference Center, featuring 309 rooms, 30,000 square feet of meeting space. New Mexico's only indoor water park featuring the Wave Runner. 2,200 square foot fitness center with hydro massage chairs. Also enjoy breakfast at our new Manzanita Grill and watch your favorite team play at Altitude Sports Bar and Grill. It's all at Wyndham Albuquerque Hotel and Conference Center.
Hey everyone, Adam Deal here with ProView Networks. Extreme Clean is a proud sponsor and supporter of ProView Networks and all high school sports athletics. Owner Mike McLean and Extreme Clean specialize in carpet cleaning for apartment, realty, business, and residential clients. With over 20 years experience, attention to detail and quality customer service matters. For more information, give them a call, 505-221-6440, Extreme Clean. Terry Cosper Insurance Agency is a proud partner with ProView Networks and a proud supporter of New Mexico high school athletics. Terry's been a local farmer's agent for over 20 years for auto, home, life, and business insurance. Just like high school sports are important, so are teen drivers. For more information, call Terry or one of his licensed staff members at 898-5556. Quotes are available for you. Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rawlins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
Nothing completes a trip downtown like a visit to Lindy's Cafe. You won't find a more relaxing restaurant to unwind at. Located on 5th and Central, proud supporters of ProView Networks, Lindy's strives to be a friendly and welcoming place.
Lindy's, a great place to be seen.
Welcome back to the New Mexico Motorsports Report on the ProView Network. That was a great interview with Brian Spencer. I mean, I was running the track when we had those 20 to 24 legends on the track. And what was great is we would have a Friday night feature and then a Saturday night program. It helped get some of those, get more cars out because they could actually get a double points weekend out of it. But one thing I remember is when we'd always run them on the quarter mile, as long as even when I ran out there, we'd watch them on the quarter mile. But they came to me and they said, hey, we want to give that half mile a try. Let me tell you, those were some fantastic races. Did you ever by chance get to come out and see any of those?
I got to see a couple of the legend shows out there. And of course, I'm pretty good friends with Jason.
Yeah.
So I got to hear all those stories pretty much every weekday after they happen. The thing that he always told me that surprised the crap out of me was how much those legend cars actually draft up to each other, especially on the big tracks. Probably more prevalent in the road course racing than anything because they have super long straightaways. But even with the half-mile stuff, they were really able to use the draft, which is surprising because they really don't have that much body to them.
Yeah, and a lot of the drivers there came over from the quarter midgets. It was great, actually, that, Brian... I just showed up one day, so I don't know how that all came about, but it was great because we did have a nice cross section. But from the quarter mile track, or from the quarter midget track, a lot of drivers, Josh Jackson, came over through the Bandoleros. Did you ever think about maybe trying to drive a Bandolero?
I actually did drive a Bandolero. I drove Dustin Tilbury's Bandolero a couple times. It was fun. I've got to say I like the Miata a little bit better. I had more fun in the Miata, which I know you enjoy. But yeah, I mean, a lot of quarter midget drivers started on dirt, and then now they all eventually kind of went to, asphalt, and now they have kind of gone to dirt. But yeah, Joshua Jackson, both the Tilburys, the Skaggs, all of those kids went to legend cars, and of course I wanted to go up too, but my parents were like, nope, we're going to school instead. So that's how that happened.
As
worked out good for you, though.
I mean, I'm going to graduate next semester. So
right.
Thanks, Mom, Dad.
Well, and it both you and Brian had talked about it. I mean, it really kind of comes down to some funding. It's not an inexpensive sport. But the one thing I would like to pose, and maybe we could talk to Brian some more about this another time, but the road course racing. I mean, the road course program is still pretty good out there. I mean, we still got some cars showing up. Of course, we've got on the winter series, we have 10 to 12 Miatas that are showing up every weekend. We used to run Legends and Miatas in the winter series. I think we should revisit that because I've definitely always wanted to drive a Legend car myself, especially on the road course. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I've told this story on the show, but the one time I was out there in January and they were out practicing and they were turning times as fast as I was in an open wheel car with slicks. So could be a lot of fun. Talking about the big boys, let's talk a little Formula One. And of course, last weekend was the Chinese Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo got the victory over Valtteri Bottas. Kimi Räikkönen came in third. Lewis Hamilton, great drive to come back to fourth. Max Verstappen, I can't believe that guy actually got fifth. He got into an accident with Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel was dominating that race. Was going to have the 3 consecutive wins. In the overall point standing, though, we still have Sebastian Vettel is still holding the points lead. 54 points over 45 points for Lewis Hamilton. That is extremely significant in Formula One because of the way they give out their points. Valtteri Bottas, Daniel Ricciardo, and Kimi Räikkönen. You probably will see a little bit of movement there between Kimi moving up into Daniel Ricciardo's position, but was a heck of a drive. And it was a lot more interesting than normal because one of the things about watching Formula One is it's so much more technical. You know, I mean, they get on different strategies, and that's exactly what happened in this case with Daniel Ricciardo. And both of the Red Bulls went to a different strategy. They had better tires at the end, and you could just see them coming on. You know, likewise, I don't know what they're going to do about Max Verstappen. And of course, I talked to you a little bit off camera about this whole, you know, the young guns. You know, Vettel used to be the guy that used to, you know, come in contact with people, think he can take it too deep. And you know, I'm not going to exclude you from this one too, but what is it about? And I think you alluded to it with you know, Brian being a little bit older, that, you know, sometimes youth has that lack of understanding of how you're putting yourself in a negative situation. You know, what is it like, you know, dealing with, you know, running with people that are seasoned veterans and running with rookies?
Well, really, Dave, I think that when you're a rookie, you're out there for something to prove.
Right.
And I think you're pushing the limits every single lap, every single second when you're out on the track. And a lot of the times you're still learning what those limits are. And unfortunately, that did bite them this weekend. And it's one thing to wreck a Formula One car, because we all know how expensive those are. It's another one to wreck your teammate.
Right. Absolutely, and that's never a good thing, by the way. And being a longtime fan of Penske, that was always the deal. You can go out and race anybody, but don't wreck your teammate. So let's talk a little bit about IndyCar. Long Beach Grand Prix, of course, is one of my favorite races on the schedule. As a matter of fact, in an interview before the race, they talked to Alex Rossi. Alex Rossi said, because of course he had 5 starts in Formula One, that one of his favorite tracks always coming over to this series was the Long Beach Grand Prix. There's a picture of Alex, the winner for the Long Beach Grand Prix. Coming in second, Will Power, and there's quite a nice battle between the two of them. Ed Jones, what a tremendous drive to finish third there. Zach Beach, also a rookie, finishing fourth. Graham Rahal, who had contact into turn one, basically sent not Sebastian Bourdais, but actually sent out Simon Pagenaud. Excuse me, another guy I'd interviewed. So I couldn't remember. Pagenaud out after turn one. So that leaves your IndyCar point standings with Rossi, 126 points, 1 victory. Joseph Newgarden, the defending champion, 104 points, 1 victory. All the way down, Sebastian Bourdais has the victory at St. Pete's, and James Hinchcliffe had actually a pretty good drive to finish 5th. But what already a point disparity. And Alexander Rossi, of course, as a rookie, won the Indy 500. And so I got to, you know, think that he's actually a real threat to win the championship. And of course, Napa being involved in sponsorship with our show, I always like to give them some love and got their name there with the Napa 27. But I was also thinking of the significance of the number 27 was also Jim Guthrie's number when he ran in IRL. As a matter of fact, Jim Guthrie still has an AOL account, and it's IRL 27. So if you ever want to email him, you can tell him that I said it was okay.
I thought they shut AOL down.
I know, right? They should if they have it.
No, I think
I'm almost positive they shut that down.
Okay, well, I'm gonna find out. But and then of course last weekend we had the Bristol race that was basically turned into an enduro, right? And it wasn't an enduro in that way because they ran the whole 500 laps, but it was over 2 days. 4 red flags with Kyle Busch with the bump and run for the win. So what are your thoughts on seeing the old Bristol with the old bump and run?
Well, Dave, old Bristol is back, at least for the time being, with the PJ1 that they applied to the racing surface down there in Bristol. Of course, I think they had a little bit of help with all the breaks in between. Of course, we had a long break, 21 hours separated the start to the finish of the race.
Wow.
And a great weekend of racing overall, of course, both in the Xfinity and the NASCAR Cup Series down there.
Well, and Jimmy Johnson had a much better run, finishing third. But one thing I noticed, second, third, and fourth were Kyle Larson, Jimmy Johnson, and Ricky Stenhouse. Of course, Jimmy Johnson with his off-road racing background, 7 championships. But you had Kyle Larson, and you also had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 2 dirt racing guys on that track, which basically when you laid the PJ1 down, the high side basically became a dirt track. So what was your thoughts on the great equalizer of being on a short track at Bristol?
I mean, Bristol is definitely one of my favorite racetracks. It's one of my favorites to watch. I think that the dirt guys do have an advantage on that track. I mean, Kyle Larson is an outstanding driver, and I was kind of sad not to see him get that win. But
well, he was kind of sad in the post-race interview. I mean, not sad as much as it was his to lose.
Yeah.
And he tried to get back to the bumper, and I tell you, he was going to put the bumper to him if he got to him, which that would have been great.
I would have loved
He's
it.
just so sick of finishing second to Kyle Busch at Bristol. I mean, how many times can you finish second to the same guy at the same track? Obviously disappointed after the race on Monday.
Well, Kyle was very sick of finishing second and third for the majority of the races in this season. And so to see him start to get momentum, which I had said last week, he gets on a roll. He does. He wins. I mean, so he could win the next couple. And then of course, probably go through the midseason slump that he does, which, I mean, you can speculate that maybe it's a Vegas thing. I don't really know. But still leading overall points, of course, Kyle Busch. I believe that he's still also got the most playoff points that he's earned so far. But when you adjust for the 3 victories, Kevin Harvick is still your overall leader heading into the playoffs. Kyle Busch, also the point leader. But I tell you, Clint Boyer, it has taken him, I don't know, let's see, 8 years to get over the curse that I put on the guy when I said he was going to win a championship. So I do owe him the fact that I'm not going to, pick him as a winner. Martin Truex, that car was tore up in that race, still sitting in 4th in points. But was there any driver out of this weekend that really surprised you, basically in any of the forms of racing?
Bubba Wallace for me. He became the first African-American driver to lead a NASCAR lap at the top series since Wendell Scott. So that was super cool to see. I was super proud of him. I thought he did great at Bristol.
Someone that I really had my eyes on this weekend, going into the weekend as well, was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in that Sunny D Roush Fenway Racing number 17 car. And he delivered. He was fast all weekend. He got caught up in a couple wrecks. His car was mangled, but he had a good shot to win that race on Monday. Went to the back, to the front, to the back, to the front. A lot of issues. I think he must have pit at least 17 times. Ran out of tires at the very end, but still came out with a 4th place finish. Very impressive for that driver, and really good to see Roush doing well on the short track program again.
Well, I tell you, one driver for me, and of course you guys both know him, is Alex Bowman. I mean, you finally have Hendrick showing up, of course, with Jimmy Johnson 3rd, Alex Bowman 5th, and to finally see him get that done. And we see the guys at the cutoff. Paul Menard had a tremendous run for most of the race, but Alex Bowman, I thought, really did a fantastic job, because all of a sudden I'm saying to myself, where did Alex Bowman come from?
Yeah.
And it was just like he just kept digging.
And there was a lot of drivers that were like that throughout the entire race on Monday.
Yeah.
It was just, where did this guy come from? Where did this guy come from? Bubba Wallace came out like fire. I mean, I don't know what clicked during that pit stop that he had, but he just started leading laps. And then here came the Sunny D Ford with Ricky Stenhouse, Alex Bowman in tow. A lot of really cool stories throughout the whole race today.
Yeah, a lot of cool stories. Of course, Spencer, great story with Brian. I look forward to what we're going to have for you next week. So make sure you continue to tune in. But if you don't get to see it, you can go to nmmotorsportsreport.com. You can check out any of them on podcast. You can check out our YouTube of these shows. Please share them. Let people know. if we want to bring racing back and get racing strong back in New Mexico, and specifically Albuquerque, we need to start getting people more involved. You've been listening to the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the ProView Network.